The Awakening. The night had been quiet, and the city outside his window was still asleep. The young man, Daniel, stirred in his bed, pulling the blanket tighter around himself. The air in the room was heavy, almost too still, like the silence before a storm. He opened his eyes slowly, expecting to see the soft glow of the lamp he always left on at night. But instead, he saw something else. Something that made his breath catch in his throat. Standing over him was his housekeeper, the alien woman he had hired months ago. Her tall figure blocked the dim light coming from the hallway. Her eyes, bright and glowing faintly like molten silver, looked down at him without blinking. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her as if she was holding back a secret. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, louder than the ticking clock on his desk. Why are you standing there?" he whispered, his voice dry and uncertain. She did not answer right away. For a moment she just stood there, staring at him, her lips pressed together as if she was fighting herself. The silence between them grew heavy, so heavy that Daniel thought it might crush him. Finally, she stepped back slightly, lowering her head. "I needed to see if you were safe," she said softly, her voice trembling with something Daniel could not name. Safe, he thought. Safe from what? It was such a strange word to use, especially in the middle of the night. Daniel pushed himself up on his elbows, staring at her with wide eyes. He had seen her clean the kitchen, cook meals, and quietly move around the house like any other worker. But tonight she looked different almost. "Afraid? You scared me," Daniel muttered, trying to sound calmer than he felt. "You can't just stand over me while I'm sleeping." But her expression didn't change. If anything, her glowing eyes softened, filled with sorrow. I'm sorry," she whispered. "I did not want to wake you." The words were simple, but her tone made them feel heavier. Daniel swung his legs off the bed and sat upright, running a hand through his messy hair. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice firmer now. "You've been acting strange these last few days." She flinched slightly, her silver eyes glancing toward the window. The curtains shifted lightly as if moved by an unseen breeze. But the window was closed. Tightly locked, Daniel followed her gaze and felt a shiver crawl up his spine. He didn't know why, but it felt like something, or someone, was out there, watching, waiting. "Tell me," he pressed, his voice sharper. "What aren't you saying?" Her hands tightened again, and for a moment he thought she would refuse, but then her lips parted, and she spoke so quietly that he had to lean closer. "You are not safe here," she said, her voice heavy with fear. The words struck him like ice water. He blinked, shaking his head in confusion. "What do you mean I'm not safe? This is my apartment, it's fine." She shook her head, slowly, firmly. "You don't understand," she murmured, her voice trembling. I was not sent here only to keep your home clean." Daniel froze, staring at her as the meaning of her words sank in. The air between them grew thick. Something about her presence now felt dangerous, not because she wanted to hurt him, but because she was holding back something that could change everything. "Then why are you here?" Daniel asked, his throat tight. "Why are you really here?" She took a deep breath, but instead of answering, she turned away. Her hands brushed the edge of the curtain, and again her eyes scanned the night outside. Daniel caught the faintest flicker of light far above the city. Like a star that did not belong there, his skin prickled with unease. "Go back to sleep," she said softly, her voice breaking a little. "I will explain soon." And with that, she stepped quietly out of his room, leaving him in the silence once again. Daniel sat on his bed, staring at the empty space where she had stood. His heart still raced, and the memory of her glowing silver eyes stayed. Burned in his mind, he had hired her because he thought she was different, mysterious but harmless. Now he wasn't so sure. Something was wrong, very wrong. And though she told him to sleep, Daniel knew sleep would not come tonight. He turned his gaze to the window, the city lights flickering in the distance. but his attention stayed fixed on the strange glow in the wan sky. It was faint, almost invisible, but now he couldn't stop staring. His alien housekeeper was hiding something, and whatever it was, it had already begun to shatter the world he thought he knew. The uneasy silence. The morning came slowly. The pale light of dawn spilling through the curtains. Daniel sat at the edge of his bed, his eyes red from a sleepless night. He could still feel the weight of his housekeeper's glowing gaze, the way she had stood over him, the way her trembling voice had warned him. "You are not safe here." Those words repeated in his head like a whisper he could not silence. When he finally stepped out of his room, he found her already in the kitchen. The alien woman moved with her usual grace, her silver hair tied back, her long fingers scrubbing the counter. But something was different. She was cleaning too quickly, almost frantically, as if the spotless surface could hide the unease in her heart. Her glowing eyes flicked toward the door again and again, checking the lock, listening for sounds beyond. Daniel stood there watching her. He wanted to ask questions, to demand answers, but the heavy silence between them pressed against his chest. He poured himself some water and sat at the table, his gaze never leaving her. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough from the long night. "You're hiding something," he said. "You can't just say I'm not safe and then walk away." Her hands froze for a second, gripping the cloth tightly. Then she turned, her expression calm but her eyes betraying a storm inside. "I told you," she said softly. "I will explain soon." Daniel slammed his hand against the table, the sound sharp in the quiet kitchen. "Not soon," he snapped. "Now." But she didn't flinch. Instead, she tilted her head, her gaze moving past him toward the window. Daniel turned and saw nothing but the pale morning sky. Still, the way she looked at it made him uneasy. It was as if she could see something far beyond what human eyes could reach. The rest of the day dragged on with that same uneasy silence. She worked around the apartment, dusting, sweeping, arranging everything in perfect order, but she never once hummed her usual quiet tune, never once asked if he wanted tea. Never once looked him in the eye. Daniel could feel it, the way she moved, the way she paused at every shadow, as if expecting danger to step through the walls. That night the silence grew heavier. Daniel lay in bed, his eyes open in the dark, listening. The city outside was quiet, but inside the apartment he heard something strange. Whispers, faint and low like a language not made for human tongues. He sat up, his heart racing. The whispers came from the living room, soft but insistent. Daniel crept to the door, his bare feet silent against the wooden floor. He opened it just enough to see into the hallway. The housekeeper was there, kneeling in the shadows, her head bowed, her silver hair falling around her face. Her lips moved quickly, whispering words he could not understand, words that sent chills through his spine. Then he froze because he heard his name. She whispered it as if it were part of a prayer, part of something sacred and terrifying. "Daniel," she breathed, her glowing eyes opening suddenly, staring into the darkness. He stumbled back, his breath caught in his throat. The floor creaked beneath his weight and her head snapped toward him. For a moment their eyes locked, his wide with fear, hers shining with something he could not name. She rose slowly, her movements graceful but filled with tension. "Why are you awake?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost guilty. Daniel's mouth went dry. "I could ask you the same thing," he whispered, his voice shaking. "What were you saying? Why were you saying my name?" Her lips pressed into a thin line, and her glowing eyes dimmed as she looked away. "I was making sure," she said, her words stumbling. "Making sure the danger has not yet reached us." Daniel shook his head in disbelief. "Danger? What danger? You keep saying things like that, but you won't explain." She stepped closer, and though her presence should have comforted him, Daniel felt his skin crawl. Her silver eyes searched his face, as if she was deciding whether to tell him the truth. But then, like before, she shook her head. "You must trust me," she said softly. "I cannot tell you yet." Anger flared in Daniel's chest. "How can I trust you when you keep secrets?" he demanded, You're supposed to be my housekeeper, but you're acting like some kind of spy." The word hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Her eyes widened, and for a moment he thought he saw hurt flash across her face. But then she turned away, her shoulders stiff. "You do not understand," she whispered, "and I cannot make you understand tonight." Daniel's fists clenched, frustration boiling inside him. He wanted to push her, to force the truth out. But something in her trembling voice stopped him. Instead, he stood there staring at her as she walked to the window, her figure outlined by the glow of the city lights, her hands pressed against the glass, her glowing eyes scanning the night. Daniel followed her gaze and froze. High above the city, hidden among the stars, a faint light flickered. It moved slowly, unnaturally, as if watching, waiting. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. It was not a plane, not a satellite. It was something else. Something that did not belong to Earth. When he looked back at her, he saw fear written across her face. A fear that told him everything he needed to know. Whatever secret she carried, it was bigger than his world. And whether he liked it or not, he was already part of it. The confession. The next morning was heavy with silence. Daniel sat at the table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of him. His mind was restless, replaying every detail of the night before, the whispers, the glow in the sky, the way his alien housekeeper had spoken his name like it was more than just a word. She moved quietly around the apartment, her steps light, her hands steady as she arranged books on the shelf. But Daniel noticed something different in her today. She seemed tired, as if she had been awake all night, watching, guarding, waiting for something unseen. Finally, Daniel could not hold back any longer. He pushed the cup aside and stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "This has to stop," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the silence. "You keep saying I'm not safe. You keep looking at the sky like something's coming, and you keep whispering my name in the dark." His heart pounded as he stepped closer, his eyes locked on hers. "Tell me the truth," he demanded. "Who are you really, and why are you here?" Her hands froze, and for a moment she did not move. Then slowly, she turned to face him, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the apartment. Her expression was soft, but filled with conflict. "I told you," she said quietly. "I was sent here to protect you." The words were simple, but the weight behind them struck Daniel like thunder. "Protect me?" Daniel repeated, shaking his head. "From what? From who? I'm just a normal man. I go to work, I come home, I hired you to help keep this place clean, that's it." Her gaze softened, almost pitying. "You are not normal," she whispered. "You were never normal." Daniel's chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. She took a slow step toward him, her hands trembling as though the words she carried burned her from the inside. "My people discovered something long ago," she said, her voice low. "A mark, hidden, in the blood of a human, a sign that one day one of your kind would be chosen." Daniel blinked, confusion and disbelief crashing together in his mind. "Chosen? For what?" he asked, his throat dry. Her silver eyes locked onto his, unblinking. "To carry something powerful," she said, her tone heavy with meaning. "A gift, or a curse, depending on how it is used." Daniel laughed nervously, shaking his head. "That's insane," he muttered. "You're saying I'm some kind of chosen one? No, that's ridiculous." But she did not smile, did not flinch. Her eyes were steady, her voice calm. "It is not ridiculous," she said. "It is the truth." She raised a hand, and for a moment Daniel thought she might touch him. But she stopped just short, her fingers trembling in the air. "I was assigned to you because your blood carries the sign," she confessed. "You are the one we have been searching for." Daniel stumbled back, his chair nearly tipping over. "No," he said quickly, his voice rising. "This can't be real. You're lying." But the way she looked at him, with sorrow, with fear, with certainty, told him she was not. His mind raced, his world spinning. He thought of every normal day, every routine moment of his life, and felt them all crumble like sand in his hands. "Why me?" he whispered, his voice breaking. "Why not someone else?" Her eyes softened, and for the first time he saw tears, shimmering in her silver gaze. "I asked the same question when I was chosen to protect you," she said. "Why you? Why a human who knows nothing of the stars? But I was told only one thing, that when the time came, your choice would matter more than any weapon, more than any army." Daniel's breath came shallow, his chest heavy. "This is insane," he muttered again, though his voice was weaker now. "You don't even make sense." She lowered her hand, her shoulders heavy with the weight of her confession. "I never wanted you to know this way," she whispered. "But the danger is close now, closer than ever. And if I do not tell you, you will die without knowing why." Her words sent a chill through his blood. Daniel's mind screamed at him to deny it, to push her words away, but deep inside something stirred. A memory he could not place, a feeling he could not explain. It was as if her confession had unlocked a door he didn't know existed. He stumbled back toward the table, gripping its edge, his hands shaking. "You're saying I have something inside me? Something that aliens are after?" Her silence was the only answer he needed, and then she whispered the words that shattered the last piece of his old world. "They are already here." Daniel froze, his eyes snapping to the window. His heart hammered as he saw it again. The faint, unnatural light flickering high above the city. This time it was closer, brighter, moving slowly as if circling, watching, hunting. He felt his skin crawl, his breath short. When he turned back to her, her silver eyes burned with urgency. "You must trust me now," she said, her voice steady. "There is no more time for doubt." The hidden enemy. The air inside the apartment felt heavier than ever. Daniel paced across the living room, his hands clenched into fists, his mind racing with the alien woman's words. Her confession still echoed inside him. They are already here. He had wanted to believe she was exaggerating, that this was nothing more than some strange misunderstanding. But the light in the sky told him otherwise. The housekeeper stood near the window, her glowing silver eyes fixed on the horizon. She looked like a statue carved from light and shadow, her body tense, her shoulders rising and falling with quiet breaths. Daniel finally stopped pacing, turning to her with a frustrated glare. "Who are they?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Who's already here? You keep warning me, but you never explain anything." Her eyes shifted from the sky to him, calm but filled with sorrow. "They are hunters," she said softly. "They come from a world that thrives on conquest. They believe strength is all that matters, and they will not stop until they take what they came for." Daniel's stomach twisted. "And what they came for is me," he whispered, more to himself than to her. She nodded slowly, her silver hair falling across her face. "Yes, you are their target, because of what lies inside you, because of what you may become." Daniel shook his head in disbelief. "This is insane," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Why me? I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't even know any of this existed until last night." She stepped closer, her presence steady, her voice calm but firm. "Neither did I, until I was chosen to serve as your guardian," she said. "And yet here we are." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the distant hum of the city, the faint vibration of traffic far below. Then suddenly, the hum was broken. A strange vibration rippled through the building, so soft Daniel thought he imagined it. But the housekeeper stiffened instantly, her glowing eyes narrowing. "They are near," she whispered. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean near?" he asked quickly, his voice rising. "How near?" Before she could answer, the lights flickered, plunging the room into brief darkness before glowing faintly again. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The city outside was alive with movement. But above, the strange light in the sky had grown, larger, closer, almost hovering. She turned sharply toward him, her voice urgent now. Listen to me, Daniel. You cannot face them alone. You must do exactly as I say. Daniel felt his chest tighten, his hands trembling. What are they going to do? Break into my home? This is Earth. There are police, there are armies, they can't just... He stopped as her expression hardened. They can, and they will, she said. Your armies mean nothing to them. They have hunted worlds far greater than this one. The word sent ice through Daniel's veins. He opened his mouth to argue, but the sound of metal groaning from the roof above silenced him. It was faint, but unmistakable. The sound of something heavy settling where nothing should be. Daniel's eyes darted to the ceiling, then to the window. The strange light outside had vanished as if swallowed by the sky. The housekeeper moved quickly, her steps graceful but firm. She pulled him away from the window and toward the shadows of the hallway. Stay close to me, she ordered, her voice low but commanding. Daniel wanted to argue, to demand answers, but fear pressed his words back into his throat. He followed her, his heartbeat loud in his ears. In the hallway, she pressed her hand against the wall. Daniel gasped as faint lines of blue light spread out beneath her fingers, glowing symbols that had never been there before. What is that? He whispered, his eyes wide. A shield, she said simply. A thin one, but enough to slow them down. Her glowing eyes locked onto his, steady and unshaking. They know where you are, Daniel, and they will not stop until they have you. A sudden crash shook the apartment, the sound of something striking against the invisible shield she had raised. Daniel stumbled back, his body trembling with fear. They're here, he whispered, his voice shaking. The housekeeper stood tall, her silver eyes blazing with light. Yes, she said firmly. The hunters have found us. For a moment, Daniel wanted to run, to escape the apartment, to flee into the city, and pretend this nightmare wasn't real. But deep inside, he knew there was no escape. This wasn't just his problem anymore. This was bigger than him, bigger than anything he had ever known. Another crash shook the wall, louder this time, and faint cracks of light spread across the glowing symbols. The shield was breaking. Daniel's breath came fast, his body frozen in place. What do we do? He demanded, panic in his voice. She turned to him, her silver hair glowing in the dim light, her face calm but determined. We fight, she said simply, her voice carrying a quiet strength. The word sent a jolt through Daniel. He looked at her, this strange, mysterious being who had once been only his housekeeper, and realized she was no servant at all. She was a warrior, a guardian, someone who had chosen to stand between him and the darkness. And now, the hidden enemy had arrived. The wall groaned again, the cracks widening. Daniel's heart pounded as the truth settled over him. This was no longer the life he had known, no longer the safe world he had believed in. The enemy was real, the danger was here, and his world was about to change forever. The first attack, the room trembled as the shield cracked again. Daniel clutched the wall, his breath coming in sharp bursts, his heart hammering against his chest. Each crash was louder than the last, and with every strike, the glowing blue symbols flickered weaker. The alien housekeeper stood tall, her silver eyes burning with light, her body tense like a blade ready to be drawn. Daniel swallowed hard, fear choking his words. They're going to break through, aren't they? He whispered. Yes, she replied, her voice calm but steady. And when they do, you must stay behind me. Daniel shook his head, panic rising inside him. No, I can't just stand here. This is my home. I can't. Her eyes flashed, with fierce intensity silencing him. If you step forward, you will die, she said firmly. Do not argue, Daniel. Not now. Before he could respond, the shield shattered with a thunderous crack. The wall rippled like glass, and 3 figures stepped through the broken light. They were tall, armored in black plates that shimmered with a strange metallic sheen, their faces hidden behind masks shaped like beasts. Their eyes glowed red through the cracks of their helmets. Burning with hunger, Daniel's stomach dropped, his body frozen in fear. The hunters moved slowly, each step echoing with menace. Their voices were guttural, a strange alien language that sounded like growls and hisses. One of them raised a clawed hand, pointing directly at Daniel. He felt his knees weaken, his body screaming at him to run, but before he could move, the housekeeper stepped forward. Her long arms stretched wide, her silver eyes blazing brighter than ever. "You will not touch him," she said, her voice carrying a weight that shook the air. The hunters paused for a moment, their heads tilting as if surprised. Then, with a roar, they lunged. Daniel barely had time to blink before the room exploded into chaos. The first hunter swung a massive blade, but the housekeeper moved faster than his eyes could follow. She twisted aside, her hand glowing with silver light, and struck the hunter's chest. The impact sent him crashing into the wall, the plaster breaking beneath his weight. Daniel gasped, his mouth hanging open. He had never seen her fight, never imagined she was capable of such power. But there she was, graceful, fierce, unstoppable. The second hunter charged, swinging a weapon that sparked with red energy. Daniel stumbled back, fear locking his legs. But again she was faster. She spun low, her legs sweeping beneath the hunter's feet, sending him crashing to the ground. Before he could rise, she pressed her glowing palm against his chest, and his body went still. The red light in his eyes flickering out. Daniel's heart pounded, his body trembling. He wanted to cheer, to shout. But the third hunter was still there. This one was larger than the others, his armor heavier, his presence darker. He moved slowly, deliberately, his red eyes fixed on Daniel, not on her. The housekeeper shifted her stance, blocking his path. "You will not take him," she said, her voice shaking with fury. The hunter growled, his claws flexing, and then he leapt. Their bodies clashed in the center of the room, the sound of metal and light crashing together like thunder. Daniel stumbled back into the hallway, watching in shock. They moved too fast for him to follow, her silver light flashing, his red energy striking. The apartment shook with each impact, furniture shattering, walls cracking, the world he knew breaking apart around him. For a moment, fear told him to run, to flee into the night and leave her behind. But something stronger held him in place. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for him. And for the first time, Daniel understood. This was not a stranger in his home, not just a housekeeper. This was someone who had chosen to protect him, even at the risk of her own life. The hunter slammed her against the wall, his claws digging into the plaster near her face. Daniel's heart stopped, panic filling his chest, but then she roared, a sound unlike anything human, a sound that carried the power of her entire being. Her body glowed with blinding silver light, and she struck the hunter's chest with both hands. The impact shook the room, and the hunter was hurled across the apartment, crashing through the window in an explosion of glass. Daniel shielded his face as shards rained around him. When he looked up, he saw the hunter's body vanish into the night, falling into the darkness below. The city outside roared with sudden alarms, car horns blaring, people screaming as they saw what had fallen from the sky. The apartment was silent. Now, except for Daniel's ragged breaths, the first two hunters lay motionless, their red eyes dim. The third was gone, lost in the streets below. Daniel turned slowly to look at her. She stood in the wreckage, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths, her silver eyes glowing faintly. For the first time she looked vulnerable, her body trembling. Her hands, stained with faint streaks of alien light. Daniel's lips parted, his voice soft. You saved me." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I swore I would," she said simply, her voice quiet, almost broken. Daniel took a shaky step toward her, his fear mixing with awe. "Why?" he whispered. "Why risk your life, for me?" Her glowing eyes softened, but her lips pressed tightly as if she was holding back something deeper. "Because it is my duty," she said, though the sorrow in her voice made Daniel wonder if there was more, much more. The sound of distant sirens filled the night, the city stirring in confusion and fear. Daniel glanced toward the shattered window, the cold wind rushing into the apartment. "This isn't over, is it?" he asked, his voice trembling. She shook her head slowly, her silver eyes still locked on the night sky. "No," she whispered. "This was only the beginning." The escape. The apartment was ruined, glass shattered across the floor, the air thick with dust and smoke. Daniel stood frozen, his legs weak, his eyes darting from the broken window to the still bodies of the hunters. His chest rose and fell with rapid breaths, his mind screaming that this was impossible, that it was all a nightmare. But the glowing eyes of his alien housekeeper told him it was real. Every part of it was real. She moved quickly, her silver hair catching the light as she checked the fallen hunters, her glowing hands pressed against their armor, searching, scanning, her expression grim. "They are dead," she said at last, her voice low. "But more will come." Daniel staggered forward, his throat dry. "More?" he repeated, his voice shaking. "There are more of them?" She nodded slowly, her silver eyes narrowing as she looked toward the night sky. "The hunters do not stop," she said. "They will send another wave, stronger than this one, and they will not rest until they have you." Daniel's heart pounded harder. He looked around at the wrecked apartment, at the life he once thought was normal, and he realized it was gone, destroyed in a single night. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice desperate. "How do we stop them?" Her gaze softened, but her words were firm. "We cannot stop them here," she said. "You must leave this place, leave Earth." Daniel froze, staring at her in disbelief. "Leave Earth?" he repeated, his voice cracking. "That's insane. I can't just leave. This is my home." Her eyes darkened with sorrow, but she stepped closer, her hand brushing lightly against his arm. "It will not be your home for much longer if you stay," she whispered. "You will not survive here." Daniel shook his head, his hands trembling. "This is too much," he muttered, his voice breaking. "Yesterday I was just a normal man. Today I'm being told I'm some kind of chosen target. And now you want me to leave the planet? I can't do that." Her silver eyes burned with urgency, her voice rising with rare force. "You must, Daniel," she said sharply. "Do you think they will stop after tonight? Do you think they will simply disappear? No, they will burn this world to ash if it means finding you." The weight of her words crushed him. He looked out the shattered window, at the city lights glowing faintly below, at the sirens flashing in the distance, and his heart ached. This was his world, his people, his life. But her words carried truth, a truth he could not deny. The hunters wanted him, and if he stayed, Earth would suffer for it. Daniel turned back to her, his voice trembling. "How?" he whispered. "If I leave, how do we even do that?" For the first time, she allowed a small spark of hope to flicker in her eyes. "There are tunnels," she said, her voice calmer now. "Hidden paths beneath this city, left long ago. By my people, they will lead us to a ship." Daniel blinked, his body tense with disbelief. "You're saying you already have a way out?" She nodded, her expression unreadable. "I was sent here not only to guard you," she confessed, "but also to guide you when the time came." The words struck him hard. He realized then that nothing about her had ever been ordinary. Not her quiet presence, not her strange beauty, not her glowing eyes. Everything about her had been part of a secret he was never meant to see. Until now, before Daniel could respond, the ceiling above groaned, dust raining down. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the building, far above. "They are here," she said sharply, her voice firm again. "We must move now." She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the door. Daniel stumbled, his body still trembling from shock, but the urgency in her grip forced his legs to move. They slipped into the hallway, the air cold and heavy with silence. Every step echoed in Daniel's ears. Every shadow seemed alive. She moved quickly, guiding him toward the basement of the building. The flickering lights above cast eerie shapes across the walls, and Daniel's heart pounded faster with every passing second. When they reached the basement door, she placed her glowing hand against the lock. Symbols of blue light spread across the metal, and with a hiss, the door opened. Beyond it was darkness, a tunnel stretching into the earth. Cold air rushed out, smelling of stone and age. Daniel hesitated, fear gripping him. Where does this go? He asked, his voice shaky. Her eyes glowed brighter in the shadows. To a place the hunters cannot follow easily, she said. A place where a ship waits. The sound of crashing footsteps echoed above them, closer now. She turned sharply, her hand tightening around his arm. There is no time, she whispered. Choose now, Daniel. Stay here and die, or follow me into the dark. Daniel's throat tightened, his mind screaming that this was madness, but deep inside a voice whispered that she was right, that there was no other way. He looked at her, this alien who had once been just his housekeeper, and he saw the fire in her silver eyes. She wasn't lying, she wasn't playing games, she was risking everything to keep him alive. Daniel took a deep breath, his heart pounding. All right, he whispered, his voice trembling but steady. I'll follow you. She gave a small nod, and without another word she led him into the tunnel. The door closed behind them with a soft hiss, sealing away the light of the world he had once known. Daniel looked back once at the faint glow fading into darkness and felt his chest tighten. He was leaving behind his home, his city, his entire life. And ahead, only uncertainty waited. But one thing was clear. There was no turning back now. The escape had begun. The truth shattered my world. The tunnel stretched endlessly into the dark. Cold air pressed against Daniel's skin, and the sound of dripping water echoed like a heartbeat through the underground. He followed her closely, his footsteps uneven, his body trembling from exhaustion, fear, and disbelief. His entire world had collapsed in a single night, and now he was walking through a hidden path beneath the city with an alien who had once only been his quiet housekeeper. She moved ahead with purpose, her glowing silver eyes lighting the way. The faint glow from her hands brushed against the stone walls, revealing markings, symbols carved long ago by her people. Daniel's gaze lingered on them, strange and otherworldly, yet strangely familiar. Why do I feel like I've seen those before? He muttered, mostly to himself. She paused for a moment, turning back, her expression unreadable. You have, she whispered. But you do not remember. The word sent a chill down Daniel's spine. What do you mean I don't remember? He asked, his voice shaky. She lowered her gaze, her silver hair falling across her face. Because part of you was hidden, locked away, to keep you safe until the right time, she said softly. And that time is now. Daniel stumbled, his hands brushing the cold wall for balance. This doesn't make sense, he said, his breath sharp. How can part of me be hidden? I'm just human, Her silver eyes locked onto him, firm and steady. You are not just human, she said. You are something more, something my people feared and hoped for at the same time. Her words echoed in his mind. As they pressed deeper into the tunnel, at last, the walls widened into a vast chamber, hidden far beneath the city. In the center stood a sleek vessel, silver and black, its surface shimmering faintly like liquid metal. Daniel's breath caught, his eyes wide. That's a ship, he whispered. Yes, she said, her voice calm though heavy with sorrow. Your way out, your only chance. Daniel stepped closer, his hands trembling as he reached toward the vessel. It pulsed faintly at his touch, glowing in response. He froze, his heart hammering. It knows me, he whispered. How can it know me? Her voice trembled as she answered. Because it was made for you. Daniel spun to face her, his voice cracking. Made for me? No, this is insane. How could something like this be waiting for me? How could it even exist? Her silver eyes shimmered with sadness as she stepped closer. Because you are not an accident, Daniel, she confessed. You were chosen before you were even born. The weight of her words struck him harder than any blow. He stumbled back, shaking. His head chosen? By who? He demanded. Why me? She lowered her head, her voice quiet, filled with pain. By my people, she said. Long ago, when they first touched Earth, they searched for the one who carried the hidden code, a genetic key tied to an ancient weapon, a weapon that could destroy or save entire worlds. Daniel's throat went dry. And that key is me, he whispered, She nodded slowly, her silver eyes shining with tears. Yes. It is in your blood, in your very being. That is why the hunters came. They want what you carry. And they will. Never stop until they have it. Daniel's knees weakened, his breath shallow. All his life he had thought he was ordinary, just another man in a crowded city. Now he was being told he carried the fate of worlds inside him. It was too much. Too heavy. He pressed his hands to his face, whispering, "This isn't fair. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this." Her hand touched his shoulder. Gentle, steady. "I know," she said softly. "And I am sorry, Daniel. But you must understand something." She paused, her voice trembling as though the words hurt to speak. "I was not sent to you because it was my duty," she whispered. "I was sent to you because I chose you." Daniel lowered his hand, staring at her in shock. "What?" He breathed, his voice almost breaking. Her silver eyes glistened as she held his gaze. "I was given an order, yes, to find and guard the chosen one," she said. "But when I found you, I chose to stay. Not because of duty, but because I believed in you, because I saw in you something more than what the code says." Her confession shattered the last wall inside him. He thought of all the times she had quietly cared for him, watched over him, stood in silence at his side. He had thought it was only her job, a housekeeper's role. But now he knew the truth. She had risked everything, her people, her honor, even her life, because she believed in him. Tears burned in Daniel's eyes, his chest heavy with emotions he could not name. "You gave up everything for me," he whispered, his voice trembling. She nodded, her voice soft but steady. "Yes, and I would do it again." A deep rumble shook the chamber, the sound of the hunters closing in above. She stepped back toward the ship, her silver eyes blazing once more. "You must go, Daniel," she said firmly. "Take the ship. Leave this world before it is too late." Daniel shook his head, his voice breaking. "No, not without you. Come with me." For a moment, sorrow filled her face. But then she smiled, faint and gentle. "I cannot," she whispered. "If I leave, they will follow, but if I stay, I can hold them back long enough for you to escape." The words hit him like a blade. "No," Daniel said fiercely. "I won't leave you behind, I won't." She reached out, her glowing hand brushing against his cheek, her touch warm and soft. "You must," she said quietly. "You are more important than me, more important than anything." Daniel's chest burned with grief, his throat tight, but the roar of the hunters above left no time. The ship pulsed again, its door opening, light spilling across the chamber. She stepped back, her silver eyes meeting his one last time. "Go, Daniel," she whispered. "Live, and one day, come back for me." With his heart breaking, Daniel stumbled into the ship, the door sealed shut, the vessel humming with power. Through the window he saw her standing in the chamber, silver light blazing around her like a shield, her figure, tall and unbroken. And as the ship rose, carrying him away, her final words echoed in his mind, words that shattered his world and rebuilt it anew. He was no longer just a man, no longer ordinary. He was chosen. He was hunted. He was destined. And somewhere in the galaxy she waited for him. The journey had only just begun.